Where to start? See, I don't usually, I'm happy to talk about myself, but what I really like to talk about are the teachings that I share. And these are the teachings of self-realization, teachings by which you discover a truth, a profound truth, deep and profound truth about the nature of reality and the nature of yourself, which we discover through this teaching or through some other means. We discover that they are one and the same, what we actually are, and the nature of reality. And this truth is liberating, it's freeing. I think in that context, yes, it's useful to introduce myself a bit. So, this truth, as I said, it's liberating, it's freeing, and it's a discovery we can all make. It doesn't depend on beliefs or ideas or anything external to us, really. It doesn't depend on an external teacher or teaching, even. We discover this can all be learned or realized within ourselves. So, your question about me, I was a seeker from a very young age, young boy. And initially, my seeking was in terms of trying to understand the world. I was fascinated by science and mathematics. And I was also fascinated by various spiritual and religious things, such as the teachings of Jesus fascinated me. And every now and again, I came across mystics of some kind, whether Eastern or Western. And these characters often fascinated me, whether it was the Buddha or whether it was Yoda from Star Wars, however it came across me in my culture, across to me in the culture I'm in, I grew up in. I grew up in the UK. My parents are from India. Um, I was fascinated by it, and I was seeking for many, many years, and I used to meditate, and I did yoga. I was taught yoga by my mother. Again, at a young age, I was taught meditation by her again at a young age. Um, and I tried to learn about all these different traditions, Hindu traditions, Buddhist traditions, Christian mysticism, New Age stuff, law of attraction, tarot, all these various things. As they took my interest, I used to indulge my interest and learn and practice. And to cut a long and potentially boring story short, I eventually came across my teacher. Bhagavan, Ramana, Maharshi. And when I first came across him, when I first came across his teachings, I first thought it was a load of rubbish, to be honest. I rejected him and his teachings. I came across some of his books and pictures of him, and I was not drawn to it at all. My mind was, looking back, I can see my mind was too active and was too conceptual. I was much more interested in the Buddhist style teachings at that time, and other forms of teaching that made more sense to my mind, but weren't giving me the freedom and relief I was truly craving, truly seeking. It wasn't giving me that peace and love in my daily life that I really yearned for, that sense of fulfillment. Intellectually, I felt I understood things, but and inwardly, I was quite happy. I was already at this point, um, I had already married, and I was working as a doctor, a junior doctor, medical doctor, and then when I first came across Bhagavan Raman, I rejected his teachings, but maybe a couple of years later, something happened where when I read his teachings, I still didn't like them. I just didn't like the tone and the way it was presented. It didn't really speak to me. But I started to feel an intense love and devotion towards Bhagavan, Ramana. Bhagavan means beloved. It also means Lord or God. And it's a sort of way of relating to somebody you have deep love and respect for and who you see the divine within. So I started developing a deep love for him, and that just, and I wasn't looking, I was never interested in the path of love. Actually, I was never interested in finding a teacher in terms of to devote myself to a teacher. I wanted to find a teacher to teach me, like you might want to find a teacher to teach you French or mathematics or to play the guitar, but I didn't want to fall in love with a teacher. I didn't want to devote myself to a teacher. That was something I was kind of allergic to conceptually. You know, my background in science, medicine, I didn't like this idea. But this is what happened to me. I started falling in love with him, and it made all the difference. And I now attribute that, I attribute my freedom, my realization to that process that unraveled in my heart within me. And it's totally changed my life and my experience. And I don't go around preaching it and everything, but if people are interested in what I'm sharing, I'm happy to share it with them. You know, I'm also very happy not to talk about it too.
For those listening, Ramana Maharshi is a sage, which most probably was not alive when you read his teachings. So some of the people listening now, they might think, "Yeah, how can you have a teacher and even fall in love with him if he's already passed away?"
Yes, I should explain. You're right. Thank you. And it is weird. It is strange. Well, it's strange for Tom because again, not only did Tom not want to really look for a teacher he could devote himself to, he certainly wasn't looking for a teacher who'd already passed away. Bhagavan Ramana, in terms of his body, he died in 1950, and so well before I was born. But I felt what I thought. I mean, I wasn't sure at first. Well, it's an interesting one. Maybe we can explore it if you want to. But I felt a deep presence within me, a deep love, and inwardly and within my mind's eye, it was projected towards, this love was projected towards Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. And my mind was like, Tom, this could just be your imagination. This could be a projection. So my mind was thinking these things, but it felt so right. It felt so right. It felt so pure and so good and wholesome. It just felt so right. I didn't, I thought maybe this is a projection. I don't know, but it was something that I'd never felt before, really. The intensity, the love, the grace. So I thought, well, let me just go with it. And that's what I did. I just went with it. And I thought, even if it's, even if it turns out to be my own projection or whatever, it wasn't that. The mind was saying, this could all be a projection. This could be your imagination, Tom. But my heart was like, this, go with it. So I just went with it. And actually, in a way, what I was going towards was a projection, but that's okay. It was, I think, my mind's way of sort of visualizing something that was happening within me that was much deeper and beyond the mind. But that was how it was experienced through the mind as well. I don't know if that makes sense. See, what we really discover in this teaching that I share, um, and this teaching that I share, by the way, it's not really a teaching that I share. This teaching is, I think, and people can discover this for themselves, see if this is true. This teaching that I share is actually within us all already. And all I'm doing is allowing that teaching within us all to bubble up, to rise up. So it's not really about believing in Tom or following Tom or anything like that, or even following Ramana, actually. It's about discovering something that's already within us. And because I came to this through falling in love with Bhagavan Ramana, the way I phrase it, and you don't have to phrase it this way, the way I phrase it is that I discovered that what I am and what Bhagavan Ramana is the same. I discovered him in my heart. And he is that which is in the heart of all of us. It's the way I would express it now, which I know that may not be a I know logically people can object to that because it's quite a sectarian way of describing things. But this is the way I like to talk about it now.
Do you think it was beneficial that you did all these practices and following your interests? And was it in part the cause that you came to this experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think on one hand, none of it really mattered that much. One hand, none of it really mattered. It was just Bhagavan's grace. It's just grace, and that grace is always there for us if we open ourselves to it, allow it into our hearts. That grace is always there. But on another level, on the level, or if you take the individual Tom, his mind wasn't ready to receive it when he was younger. And he probably had to go through all these things just to open his mind and heart up. As I said, when I came across Bhagavan Ramana's teachings a couple of years prior, I rejected them because my mind wouldn't allow me to see the truth of them. Even when I started falling in love with him, my heart was saying, my heart was just in love with him. But my mind still didn't like the teachings that I just thought they're not right, or they're being translated wrongly, or I can say it better than this. I can phrase the teaching's better than this, and or what he or I would distort it. I'd say when Bhagavan says this, what he really means is this. So I tried to make sense of it to my mind, but it wasn't his teachings in terms of the words, the teaching that attracted me to him. It was, in fact, it was. I feel like he came into my life, or he came into me and took me. That's the experience, is that I had no choice almost, and I was willingly, happily taken. It was like he came into me and took me. That's what the experience is like.
I value very much being exposed to your presence, talking to you right now. But could that be something like people look forward to, being closer to a person who has this experience or who got rid of the person and recognize their divine nature?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we will, if we, as a seeker, we will have to follow the path that we follow, you know. As an individual person, each individual or apparent person, each apparent individual person will weigh up and make an assessment or judgment based on what they like and how their feelings are, etc., etc. They'll make their own judgment of what to do. And for some people, they're not drawn to trying to be near a teacher, someone like me. But for other people, they will be drawn to that. So that's the way it is. You know, some people will be drawn to being near somebody who has had this realization. And for those people, I would say it's very beneficial. There are problems, of course, with being drawn to teachers, because as soon as you're drawn to a body mind entity, a person, there's always a scope for abuse. And so there's always that tension between attraction to a teacher, perhaps, if that is the case for you, and then also not being keeping your mind switched on, not being dull or gullible, not keep just allowing the mind to still be discerning.
So what should we do? Knowledge or bhakti? What is, what could you recommend? Or both?
Yeah. I mean, to briefly touch upon, you see, the teacher is within us, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't go to an external teacher if we are drawn to it. Sometimes we apparently need to go to an external teacher to discover the teacher within. It's a bit like when I was younger, when you used to learn to ride a bicycle, we used to have these stabilizers. These in the US they call them training wheels. And the idea of the training wheels, or the stabilizers as we call them, is that they help you in the beginning, but eventually you don't need them anymore. But to right at the beginning to say I don't want the training wheels, that can be very detrimental. So we should be careful not to turn away from crutches and props and aids too quickly. And we should be open to leaning on things, leaning on things outside us, if that is our path. And we will know if it's our path because we'll be drawn to it. And if you're not drawn to it, if you're drawn just to go within straight away, that's fantastic. And just do that. That will be enough. But if you're drawn to seeking a teacher or this or that, then that that probably is going to be helpful for you. So that's just that previous point. In terms of your question, bhakti or jnana. Bhakti means devotion, love. in Sanskrit. Jnana means knowledge. And of course, they're one and the same. They're one and the same. But the way we enter into the teaching varies. So some people are more intellectually inclined, which was me. But ultimately, bhakti became my path. That was not what I was looking for. And for other people, they they have a devotional sense. That is the sort of main thing that moves them. So they can enter that way. And I have written quite a few articles on this. If you go to my website, tomdas.com, you'll see on the first page some introductory articles that cover all the different aspects of the spiritual path in brief. And I've written an article on knowledge and love and devotion. For most people, both is a good idea. But we can't really choose which way we're inclined. We'll end up following the path that we follow. There will be people listening who are much more interested in knowledge, and maybe there are people interested who are naturally more inclined to devotion. So,
So when people come to your teachings and maybe eventually they come to a point where they say, hey, where's my satisfaction guarantee? You promised me. How do you handle that?
well, when most people come to my meetings and engage with the teachings, they start to feel happier. Um, I've not had anybody come to me and say that to me in all the years I've been sharing this. And it perhaps because the people who don't benefit from my teaching just leave, they just move on to another teacher or teaching that's working better for them, which is great and fine. And I don't claim to be the best teacher for everyone, you know. But for the people who resonate with what I'm sharing, then often, usually, their lives are transformed. They become happier, happier, and more love, more peace, more light comes in because it isn't about me. It's about accessing or contacting what we actually already are, the love that we are, the happiness that we are, and allowing that to bloom, blossom, manifest, become what we actually are in our experience. And for people who resonate with me, that will just that naturally just happens. Um, as far as I know.
Where from do you draw the motivation to do what you are doing?
I have very little motivation to do this. Um, when I'm talking to you, for example, it's fine. am very much enjoying being here. Um, I very much enjoy talking about this. And if you come to some of my meetings, sometimes we have we do have lots of silence in the meetings, but sometimes I will go on a long monologue. So clearly there's something in Tom that he's able to talk about this stuff. But you know, when I'm when I'm not on a call with you or um I'm not holding a meeting or I'm not really talking about this stuff, you know, with my family, with my friends. Unless someone's particularly interested, I won't really talk about this.
Can you explain the value of stillness? I just remember Mother Mira. Maybe you heard about her. She's from India and she lives in Germany most of the time. Her teaching is beautiful. She does these meditations where she just comes, she sits, and there's stillness.
for the question. You see, stillness is our true nature. Stillness is our true nature. I've just realized as you've asked these last few questions that th my um my my disposition is typically that I don't really want to speak. That's kind of my natural set point. And one of the reason I speak is when the teaching is drawn out of me. And that's usually by the presence of seeking energy. So the presence of seeking energy, presence of a seeker seeking, it's the combination of the seeking energy, the non-seeking energy that creates a teaching. By myself, there's no verbal teaching, but when I interact with someone seeking, someone who genuinely is looking for this, who's open, whose heart is open, whose heart is yearning, then the teaching emerges spontaneously.
So for those who think they need a teacher, what would you recommend to them to decide which teacher to follow or to recognize that it is a teacher worth following?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't recommend everyone follows me because it just depends if you resonate. It depends if you hear me and you think, oh yes, that interests me or that excites me, that motivates me, that fascinates me. I'm drawn to that somehow. I love the energy, whatever it is, whether it's intellectual attraction or energetic, heartfelt attraction. I think I think you have to follow your heart. You go to the teacher that fascinates you, that interests you, that attracts you. And I mean, Bhagavan, when he was asked this question, he said, "Go to the teacher that gives you peace." I would slightly disagree because I'm sure his answer was perfect for the context he was in, and I'm sure I've said something like that before to people. But you've got to go to the teacher that you like to see and I would say this is now Tom encroaching with his own ideas. I would say make sure you can trust them. Are they many teachers are very, in my opinion, are very egotistical actually. And so just and I'm sure we've all seen them. So are they are they emphasizing the way are they emphasizing their personality? Are they emphasizing the way they look? Are they emphasizing their body, their mind? Or are they emphasizing something that isn't to do with them? You know, some teachers emphasize it's always about photos of them and pictures of them and things like this. And other teachers don't do that. So there are, in fact, I've done a whole load of videos on how to avoid certain types of teaching, the false teachings, the non-liberating teachings. So people can check that out. And there's a whole load of discussions we've had in our meetings about that. But ultimately, feel free to ignore everything I say. You have to go with what feels right to you. But I'll just encourage people to, some people are very led with their hearts, and that's good. But keep your mind switched on. And to some people are very led with their minds, and that's good. But I'd say open your heart. So this balance, going back to your earlier question, there's this balance between the intellect and the heart. You know, the intellect is like a steering wheel Or on a boat, it's like a rudder. It steers us in the right direction. You know, the rudder that can steer the boat. You move it. And the heart is like the engine or the sail. You see, when you're in a boat, the heart is like the sail, and the wind catches the sail and pushes us forth. It gives energy and motivation and dynamism to our journey. But the rudder is like it will steer the course. Will keep us on course. Whereas if we just go with our heart, sometimes, especially if we're not emotionally, psychologically mature, we can end up in all sorts of problems. Similarly, the intellect alone is dry. So it's like having an amazing car with an amazing steering wheel but no engine, or a not very good engine, you know. So it's just a metaphor.
Yeah, I'm worried about myself because I feel very much drawn, like to tell people what they should do, or if I have like discussions with my friends, or I'm yeah casual. Even if I meet people on the street or something, I feel inclined to tell them to look for spiritual growth and stuff like this. I feel, and I'm worried about that because I don't know if it's really necessary.
No, be yourself. You see, I've told you what I'm like, but you don't have to be like me. You know, there are, I do think as we spiritually mature, we become less like that. Sorry to be, I hope that's not too rude. But there's a time and place for that. And I'm sure your advice has benefited many people, you know, so, and will continue to do so. So there's a place for everything, you know. There's a place for someone like me that, you know, I'm a bit quieter. And that's perfect for some people. And then, you know, there's someone, let's say a caricature of someone like yourself who's, you know, who's happy to give advice, and you maybe have, you might have more fixed views on what that advice looks like. So for example, if someone asked you what to look for in a teacher, you may give more of a concrete answer. Now, my kind of my answer, which was actually quite vague, might be super helpful for some people, but it might be super unhelpful for other people who are looking for more structure. And maybe if they ask someone like you, you'd say, look, these are the 5 qualities you need in a teacher. You need da, 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 da. And that would help them much more. That's not my style, you know. I'm not here to tell people what to do. I only share what I share with people who want to hear what I have to say. If you don't want to hear what I have to say, I'm very happy not to tell you. Um, and I don't sort of have fixed ideas on things. But so, you know, it's different things for different people. Don't worry about yourself. I'm sure you're doing amazing. I'm sure you're doing great work, and be yourself. Be yourself. Be you. And the other thing about being yourself is that you'll naturally get tired of giving advice when it's if and when it's right for you to get tired of that, you know? And maybe it isn't right for you to get tired of it. But I'm just saying that through being yourself, we also come sometimes we take an urge within us, and we play it out, and then the urge extinguishes itself. The only thing I say to people is be wholesome as possible. And there are different aspects of being wholesome. The way I usually express it is make sure you're being good to body mind, meaning you're looking after your body mind, and you're not damaging, or you're looking after other people's body minds and the world, the environment in which we live in, the body mind world, the BMW. As a German, you'll like that acronym perhaps, or maybe not. The body mind world, the BMW. We're just taking care of the body, the mind, and the world. But another aspect of it if you're giving advice, is to always be sincere. And simple ways to do that are by saying, look, this is my experience. You know, this is what's worked for me. You just preface what your advice is. What should you look for in a teacher? Well, this is what I think based on my experience. Will this be the right advice for you? I don't know. But this is the advice. This is what I've found out for me. And then there's humility and sincerity. And the other aspect of humility, sincerity is not pretending to know something you don't know. Very important, in my opinion. And there can be a tendency of us to try and pretend, for some of us at least, um, to try and pretend that we know more than we do, and never always be work within your competence, within your competency. And sometimes you might have ideas of things, and just be honest. Say, well, this is my idea. I'm not sure if it's true, you know. And this is the way I am. I try to share my experience and what I know. But there'll be things when I don't know, I'll just say I don't know. It's much simpler. And it steers you away from making mistakes. So you might be worried about things, like maybe you're worried about giving someone the wrong advice. Well, this is why you preface it with these things, and that way you're able then to give your advice, but you're also able to encourage them to be critical about it and appraise it. And so you're not responsible for what they do with your advice. You know, I always say to people, well, I'm here sharing, but I'm not taking responsibility for your life. You know, that's up to you. You know, I will happily give my advice if you ask for it, but what you do with that, that's up to you. That's your responsibility. That's not my responsibility. Of course, I will try and help, but what if I get it wrong? That's that would be it's your responsibility what you do with the words and the learning you get from an interaction with me. That's up to you.
I did some pilgrimage, and then I talked to the pilgrims and I asked them, what is spirituality? What happens when you die? And then one person, for example, he said, no, I am my mind. And
Mm.
when I die, my mind dies, so I disappear. I dissolve into nothingness.
Mm.
And of course, maybe from my personal point of view, I would say, hey, come on, wake up. What are you doing? You're wasting your time. You have a wrong idea about yourself. You're not your mind.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I have to accept that. And still, and when I accept it, I can see why he's thinking that and why he's so attached to his mind. And maybe it's beneficial for him, and for sure he appreciates that he has a mind and the
Yeah.
mind is given through the divine source at the same time. So
I
it's
see.
still valuable. That's what I want to say. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So what you're saying is that you can see how sometimes people have a materialistic view. They consider themselves the body mind, but that's fine for them, for where they are. You see, there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, um, which is this holy text, a very popular text in the Indian subcontinent. And there's a verse where Krishna, who is essentially speaking as God, is talking to Arjuna, who is in this case a representative of an everyman, a human being, a seeker. And Krishna says, and this is not meant to be talking down, but it can come across like that. But he says, the ignorant, let the ignorant remain ignorant. If the people aren't interested in what you're saying, just let them be. And the reason is not because they're lower than us and we shouldn't concern ourselves. It's because everyone has their path. Everyone has their path. And you look back on your own spiritual journey, you'll see the same trajectory. I look back on mine, I see the same trajectory. Everything that happens to us, in a way, see, right at the beginning of this call, you asked me that question. I said, in one way, it has no relevance until the other way, everything happened perfectly as it was meant to happen. in truth, there are no separate people at all. So we don't have to worry about any of that. As long as we realize our own nature, when we realize our own true nature, in that moment, everyone wakes up at the same time, poetically speaking, metaphorically speaking. When you wake up, everyone wakes up. So all you need to do is you don't need to wake everyone else up. There are some teachers and teachings that are trying to enlighten the whole world and go to critical mass and all this kind of stuff. But from my point of view, and that's fine, I've got nothing against those teachings. But from my point of view, they're misguided because when all you have to do is realize your own self, and then everyone has woken up. And so from that point of view, we can let every other apparent person, they're not really separate people out there to help. It's an illusion, but we can allow every other apparent person to do what they need to do in their own way. It doesn't mean we don't interact with them or say anything to them, or we can still interact and say and give our view, but it's not out of a it's not out of false sense. If we do it out of our own false sense of self, then we will project our own false sense of self onto them and consider them to be a person who can also realize the self. It doesn't work like that. The body mind can't actually realize the self at all. It's only the self that knows itself. Realization is not for a body mind. It's not for an individual at all.
Yeah, people might have a little misunderstanding that actually the person, I can wake up, I can be enlightened. It's not happening. It's a little bit disappointing for some.
It is. It is. It can conceptually it's disappointing, but in experience it's wonderful. It's liberating.
So all these people, those believe that the world is on fire. Is there anything we can tell them, anything we can say, how to overcome all this imaginative stress, the stress level supposedly that's so high today, 2025?
Mm, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are lots of people who would say lots of helpful things to lots of people about the stress levels. And there are probably practical steps you can take, like things towards mental health and well-being. There are lots of very practical steps you can take towards well-being and to good mental health. And I've had for much of my career, I've had a deep interest in mental health and psychological health and emotional health and well-being, and I've worked in those areas and helped people through those things. But I just talk to people who come to me who are interested in this teaching. You know, I don't my primary message isn't for uh tens and hundreds of thousands of people who are suffering and who aren't interested in this stuff. I'm here really sharing this teaching with those who are interested. So if someone came up to me individually, and they'd have done, because many of people who come to my meetings, for example, several of them have found recent world events in the last few years, whether it's the war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza, Israel, or recent American elections, or prior to that, the EU, Brexit. And there's always things going on in the world. And many people have come to me individually and said, Tom, I'm finding this difficult, I'm not finding that difficult, and I will help them. But the advice I give is tailored for that person's psychology, that person's beliefs, that person's political persuasion, and we have an interaction. And, 9 times out of 10, maybe more, they come out with more peace and they understand how they can cope better. But the more closely you work with people, I've worked with people for many years, the more you realize there's not one piece of advice that works for everyone when it comes to emotional, psychological things. You have to adapt to the person you're talking to. And there was a very famous yogi, Yogananda Paramhamsa, who wrote a very famous book, the autobiography of a yogi. And he visited Ramana Maharshi once. He visited Ramana, and Yogananda was about to go on a tour of the USA to spread his teachings. And he asked Bhagavan Ramana, Ramana, what is the teaching I should take to the Americans? What is the teaching? And Bhagavan Ramana said, there is no one teaching you can give to everybody en masse. The implication is that the teaching that each individual needs is on a body-mind level is unique. Ultimately, it comes down to knowing yourself, ultimately. But the way we get there, the way the path takes us there, it's unique to each individual apparent person. They have their own unique way. I mean, look what happened to me. I would never have imagined it. And everyone finds their way in their own time. Like all the drops of water that fall as rain find their way to the ocean. This is the analogy, at least. Each drop of water finds its own unique way to the ocean. In general terms, you're going downhill, down a slope into the ocean. There's the same basic principle for everyone, but the individual nuances of the journey, they vary. So what I say to one person, how to deal with all this political unrest or fire in the world, it's going to vary depending where they are. I have actually done some YouTube videos on that, so you can Google that if you want to see some specific. The videos that I put out, they're created by volunteers who come to the meetings, and they're recordings of interactions, you see, so that you'll see me respond to an individual person, and that may or may not apply to you. What do you think of that, Hans? Does that?
I'm a little bit radical about it because
Go
I
on.
understand that we come into this world as spiritual beings, and we already decided that we want to have this experience or that experience, and that some people, they really come here to suffer. They want it. And some people even, as I understand it, they decided, okay, I'm going to help this body here, my other part of my soul. I'm going to help him to have this experience. So I'll be the bad guy. I come and I will torture him. I will kill him. I will do the most atrocious things so he can experience that because he wants to go fast forward. And I understand also that this is one way, but I guess I'm a fan of the way of bliss, like Ananda, following follow your bliss. And I think it's I hopefully it's as valuable, although yeah, I understand there has to be the balance between dark and light. And
No, I very much like the follow your bliss teachings, because ultimately what happens is that initially we follow our bliss outwardly, and it makes us happier in the world, and it heals us of a lot of negative energy when we follow our bliss outwardly. And then when we reach a point where we're happy as a person, body, mind, we will naturally start the follow our bliss becomes more like the bliss that we follow changes from a, like what is called a rajasic happiness. Rajas means this vibrant, passionate happiness, and becomes a sattvic peace. Sattvic means peace, wisdom, equanimity, balance. So by following our bliss, we initially become very happy, ecstatic, which burns off all the negativity. Tamas, it's called in Sanskrit, burns off all the negativity, the dullness. And then after we attain enough rajas, which is this passionate vitality, vibrancy, we start naturally not being so attracted to that anymore. We'll naturally be interested in peace. And follow our bliss becomes become at peace. But again, we can't force this because some people listening, they'll naturally want to go towards peace, sattva, and some people naturally want to go towards rajas, happiness and vibrant happiness. And whichever of these two we go towards, we have to allow that to happen to an extent. And that's how we purify the body mind. And eventually we have to come to peace. Our follow our bliss becomes follow your peace, become at peace. And this then eventually drives us within. This is a very natural path. The path naturally unfolds in people, whether they know the path or not, it will naturally unfold. And so this is why when people come to me, I'll often intuitively see where they are and are they trying to burn off negative energy, in which case they're trying to become rajasic and very happy in the world. And this is usually vibrancy, color, vitality. They'll be attracted to that kind of spirituality. But when you've had enough of that, that sometimes you really want to be a part of a group, you want to wear the spiritual clothes, you want to dance, you want to sing. It's very beautiful, very wonderful. That usually has a shelf life. And at some point we say, okay, this has been amazing, this has been wonderful. I want something simpler now. I want something simpler. I don't need that vibrancy anymore because before I needed it. Why? Because I was feeling negative and it took me away from my negativity. We need the positivity to take us away from the negativity. And then once the negativity is gone, we don't feel so drawn to that uplifting, exuberant positivity. And we instead are drawn to being simple, still at peace. And often this is when people are more attracted to my teachings, which is also why I'm not that popular, probably, because most people are very much more attracted to the Rajasic teachings. And my teachings are very sort of sattvic and you could say boring or bland, you know. People who are attracted, many people will see what I'm talking about. They think, oh, it's boring, it's bland, it's dull. But for some people, when they reach a certain level of development, it's like, it's blissful, it's peaceful, it's serene. And that's not going to be right for everyone.
I understand that there's a need for religious institutions and people those follow a religion or a religious institution to come together, even if they are in different religions, to communicate, to talk. So,
Mm.
because it's peace building. That's I see it as a form of peace building with which is actually quite urgent because it can heal the world. You know, that's
Totally.
my idea of it. I'm not sure.
Well, I think that they're different things with interfaith then. It's not something I talk about very much. I may never have talked about it before, actually, but since you've asked, you've given me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts. I mean, first of all, perhaps you wouldn't call this interfaith. My personal view is that there is a core truth in most, if not all, well, let's say all genuine spiritual traditions, all genuine religions, spiritual religions. There's a core truth there that most, if not all, of these religions are coming into contact with in their own way. So it doesn't matter to me if you are of a particular faith or if you're of no faith. These teachings that I share are available to everyone, whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, whether you have a strong faith or you don't have a strong faith. These teachings will work with you because it's not about that. It's deeper than that. And there's that core truth which is beyond words. It's a truth within us. And perhaps in some ways, all religions are pointing to this. So that's one thing. And that's one of the sorts of things that it's one of the, because that's quite a scientific way of looking at it, actually. It's like there's a unifying principle beneath all these different phenomena. That's what science does. And because I come from a science background, when I was younger child, that's one of the things that attracted me to this path. See, what I think there is a philosophy underlying what you're saying, which is the philosophy of mutual respect, of valuing human life, of valuing human beings, irrespective of what they think or what they believe. So there's a philosophical underpinning to what you're saying, which is that, see, if I belong to one religion and you belong to another religion, but we both have a fundamental view that life is precious, and irrespective of what you think or believe, I will care for you, I will respect you, I will listen to you. You have value, just as I have value. You may believe something different to me, you may have a different tradition, a different way of life, a different culture, but ultimately, that we do share a core value, which is that we both think that irrespective of what someone thinks or believes, they have inherent value, you see. So for interfaith dialogue to work, though, that there has to be that core value there. And not all faiths and not all cultures and not all traditions have that core value. So you can only have interfaith if someone has that value. And so if that, as long as that value is taught, that doesn't matter what you think, what you believe, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, it's fine. And as long as and everyone has inherent value as a human being. You could you could then extend that to the animal kingdom, of course, as well, if you wish to. And you can also extend it to the plant kingdom and the mineral or the what we call non-living world as well. And the basic principle is the principle of, in Sanskrit, it's called ahimsa. Ahimsa literally means do no harm. Means harm, and ahimsa means no harm. So it's translated as non-violence. And the idea of ahimsa is that we should try not to damage anything or destroy anything or harm anything unless we have to, whether that's the body, the mind, an animal, a plant, or a mountain, or a lake, or a forest. We should try not to destroy things or harm things or damage things unless we really have to. Whether that's destroying a plant or killing an insect or killing an animal or killing another human being and all the whole range of things. We should try never to do these things unless we have to. And um, this is the principle of ahimsa. But interfaith dialogue can only occur when we actually respect each individual human being. Now, not all cultures have that. That is not a core belief, a core value in all cultures, in all traditions. And when that's not there, then you'll find the interfaith becomes very difficult. So part of what I think you're trying to do is basically spread this philosophy, spread this view, this understanding that human beings were inherently valuable, irrespective of our beliefs and opinions. No, what you're doing, you're sharing different teachings so people have an opportunity to open their mind and hear different
Yes.
views, isn't it?
And hopefully this leads
Mm,
to peace, and this leads also to respect other
I
beliefs
see.
and to respect other people and to recognize that we are all humans and
Yes,
that we are actually not separate souls, but we are all from the same
yeah,
source. So that's
wonderful. Absolutely. That's one, and that I think you're right. When people listen to each other, magic happens. That's what I think. I think when people actually deeply listen to each other, magic happens. We it's very easy to shut ourselves off into our own echo chambers and just stick with our own thought patterns and our own beliefs and stuff, but we can remain enclosed. And this is the negative side of religion, right? And spirituality. It can happen, isn't it? And I think what you're saying is you're trying to encourage listening and hearing. That's a great thing.
our soul in itself has a very hard time to perceive itself. It's like our eyes. We look outside, and but I heard this example from Sarva Priyananda, and I loved it very much. It's a nice metaphor. Our eyes, they can't see themselves. We can look into a mirror, but we do not see our eyes. The eyes only can look outside. And with the soul, in a way, it's the same. The soul is not able to the self can't see the self. But when we talk to other persons, then the self is talking to the self. That's why I called this channel Talking to Source, because every other human I'm talking
Mm,
to, it doesn't matter if it's an enlightened person, if it's someone who's awakened, or if it's someone who's deeply possessed by the idea that they are their body. Still, I'm talking to Source. I'm talking to this one Source, which is everything.
beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I love it. Love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Mm. And again, this is the idea that we all have value. I was expressing it philosophically and even politically that each individual has value. But why is this? It's because of what you've just said. You see, I remember I went to a town many years ago in a part of England where there aren't very many people of color. And I was staying there for a few days and ended up chatting to one of the locals. And he was a young man, and I was a young man at the time as well. I was in my early 20s, and so was he. And he said something like, I haven't met many people who aren't white, but you're okay. And on one hand, it was, you could criticize it as being quite racist in a way, and ignorant, and I'm sure it was, but it was him having an experience of talking to somebody who looks very different to him and realizing we're not that different to each other. And it was a waking up moment for him. He was like, wow, I've never really spoken to someone who looks like you, and you're not too bad, really, which I took as a compliment, you know. Um, and that's one level, but this interfaith dialogue and this channel, it's all that in a way, but it's that same idea really, but we take it further and further and further, and eventually it's so, did you say what's your channel called again? Sorry.
Talking to Source.
It's talking to
It sounds a
source.
little bit
It's
arrogant.
talking to source.
I'm still have this to-do list where on top of it is like make a video which explains the title, because it sounds a little bit arrogant. Maybe people could understand. Oh, this guy thinks he's Source, and then he's talking to other people. Talk to him.
And the truth is, you do think you're source, but you also think everyone else is too.
When I was in Chiang Mai in Thailand, where we did like a pilgrimage between different religious places, like from the Orthodox Church to the Sikh temple, passing by a place where Baha'i people meet. And these people, they walk together from one place to another, and then they start talking, and it's really helpful. It's like they become friends. And the person who initiated
Mm.
all this, like she started to invite them. First, she went to all those places, and then she started to invite everyone, and then they meet together, and eventually they made like a WhatsApp group, and then they communicate, and they found out, well, you have a different religion, but actually we're talking about the same thing.
Closed-mindedness and narrow-mindedness in many ways is terrible, but on a personal level, for some people, it's what they need for a point in their journey. Um, I've known people who have had very difficult childhoods and who started taking drugs and things like this from a very young age, And when they found a very strict form of religion, that was what enabled them, with very sort of very black and white beliefs. That's what enabled them to climb out of that lifestyle. And sometimes a few years later, their views loosen as the suffering decreases, you know. But it can be very damaging too, of course, these sorts of views. So
I had the experience that
yeah.
in the pilgrimage at one point we talked about it before about suffering, and then so I talked to a person and I told them about my belief about it. Like people actually have a like a soul contract. They come here, they want to experience certain things, and they do it. And even maybe their suffering is a teaching for others to evolve. So they are inclined to be reincarnated, go through some suffering, and just. I heard from some sages. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I was thinking that already 15 minutes ago we should like have a final word or something. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah, just this one thought that I heard a lot about a
Yeah.
lot of people. They
I mean,
are
you'll
kind of
know for some
awakened
people
and
that's a
then they
very
hide.
offensive thing to say,
They don't want
you know.
to be
I mean, much of what
exposed
we
to the
talk about
public
is
because
very
the
offensive
public is
to
not
many
ready to
people.
hear what they are
And
talking about.
obviously we don't
So they kind
intend,
of really
we're not
hide.
trying to offend anyone
Anyway,
or
I
hurt
don't know if
anyone,
you have
but
like 1 minute to make like
inevitably for
some
some
final
people,
statement or
what we're
something,
sharing
and
is
then so we can close it.
very
Yeah.
damaging for them from their point of view. I guess in terms of me and what I share, people, if you resonate, then come along to one of my meetings. We have 2 meetings a week online, and we have an in-person meeting in London in the UK once a month. And there's a website, tomdas.com, which has got a huge amount of resource on almost all aspects of spirituality. So take a look, see what you think. Um, it's actually not so easy to sum up the teaching in like a word or two because it just depends on where you are. But what I like to do is bring I like to meet people where they are, and wherever you are, I can meet you, and if you're interested, and help guide you towards your own self. Just like stabilizers on a bike or training wheels on a bike. Eventually, the idea is to make myself redundant. But if you think I'll be of use to you in the meantime, please reach out and I'm here. I'll try and help in any way I can. So thank you so much, Hans. Thank you.
Thank you.
You keep on being yourself. Keep on being you, isn't it?
Why not? I don't have anything else.
Exactly. Exactly. Just be yourself.
Thank you.
Be yourself. You're welcome. Thank you so much. Bye bye.